For years, my girlfriend and I had been working hard to prepare the company for its IPO. Now that the company was on the verge of going public, she was about to make our relationship public. However, her assistant, who had always disliked me, got ahead of her. The assistant walked onto the stage triumphantly, put his arm around her waist, and taunted, "Didn't you say we'd wait a few more years? Can't even hold out that long?" My girlfriend didn't offer an explanation. Instead, she handed him a share transfer agreement and announced that he had become the company's new shareholder. The crowd was shocked, and the assistant became even more arrogant, hurling thinly veiled insults at me. Not only did my girlfriend not stop him, but she said coldly, "You've done a lot for the company, but his talent is what the company needs for its future." I wasn't angry. I smiled, nodded, and handed over my remaining shares to the assistant as well. When Emily announced on stage that Ryan had become the company's newest shareholder, the room erupted in thunderous applause. I stood there frozen, my mind foggy from too many late nights of overtime. For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. Look at Jake's face, it's priceless. He's been with the CEO for years, and only got 2% of the shares. Ryan's barely been here, and snagged 20% just like that. Jake's always nitpicking Ryan's work, but now, he looks like a total clown. The crowd wasn't even trying to be subtle with their laughter, making sure I could hear every word. They weren't mocking me for fun, they were trying to curry favor with Ryan. And Emily? She didn't even bother stopping them. Ryan shot me a smug grin, his voice dripping with fake innocence as he said, "Jake, no applause from you? Don't tell me you're upset about me getting shares." He paused, a theatrical pout forming on his lips. "I mean, if we're talking seniority, I guess you should have gotten them instead." With that, he lazily extended the contract toward me, like he was handing me a consolation prize. But before I could react, Emily snatched the papers away and pushed them back into his hands with a playful yet firm gesture. "Ryan, you're too kind," she said with a soft laugh. "But the company values talent, not tenure." Then, her gaze turned cold as it landed on me. "And you, Jake, don't you dare make a scene. Let's not forget the massive mistake you made last quarter, costing the company millions. The fact that I didn't fire you outright was already generous. What right do you have to expect shares?" The two of them were perfectly in sync, like actors in a well-rehearsed play. I couldn't help but find it amusing. That mistake she mentioned, it was Ryan's fault. He panicked when things went south and pinned the blame on me. I tried to present evidence and explain the truth to Emily, but she didn't believe me. She never did. I'd grown used to it by now. Over the years, Ryan had shown little talent, but had poured all his energy into undermining me. Fresh out of college, he knew how to charm people with his words. He'd won over most of our colleagues, and even Emily thought he was harmless and honest. So, every time Ryan and I clashed, Emily always assumed I was at fault. And because of that, my coworkers had grown increasingly disrespectful toward me. Ryan's voice interrupted my thoughts, still dripping with mock humility. "But I'm just worried Jake might feel bad." As he spoke, he leaned closer to Emily, his head almost resting on her shoulder in an uncomfortably intimate gesture. Emily didn't push him away. Instead, she shot me a sharp look. "Jake, wipe that sour look off your face," she snapped. "I thought long and hard about this decision. Stop sulking and ruining everyone's mood. If you can't handle it, maybe you should just leave." The room erupted in agreement, voices chiming in to back her up. I knew Emily was just venting her frustration, but I couldn't help but laugh. The investors? I had brought them in after countless sleepless nights. The proposals? I had rewritten them over and over again. The IPO? It had only succeeded because of my efforts. And now, with the company finally going public, they wanted to cut me out entirely? They thought a few harsh words could erase all my hard work. I grabbed my bag and strode toward the stage. Ryan, clearly nervous, shrank behind Emily, his eyes wide with fear. Emily immediately stepped in front of him, shielding him like a mother bear protecting her cub. "Jake, what do you think you're doing?" she demanded, her voice sharp with warning. I pulled a document from my bag and held it out to her. "I just think," I said calmly, "that Ryan's worked so hard, the shares you've given him aren't enough." I smiled faintly. "Take mine too. Let's hope he can keep up the momentum." Ryan's eyes lit up as he stared at the document, practically salivating at the thought of owning more shares. Emily, however, looked at me with suspicion, her expression unreadable. The room fell silent as everyone tried to process what I had just done. They all knew how much I had sacrificed for the company. I'd been there since day one, building it from the ground up. I'd handled everything, from securing investments to juggling the smallest of tasks. Now that the IPO was a success, my shares were worth millions. Everyone had assumed I'd use this opportunity to negotiate for more. No one could have imagined I'd simply give them away. What they didn't know was that Emily wasn't just my boss, she was my fiancé. For years, she had insisted we keep our relationship a secret to avoid workplace gossip. But when Ryan showed up, I started to worry. I begged her to acknowledge our relationship, and after much pleading, she finally agreed to announce it on the day of the IPO. Last night, I was so excited I couldn't even sleep. But when the moment came, Ryan stepped onto the stage first, wrapping his arm around her waist. And Emily, she didn't stop him. She didn't even seem uncomfortable. Everyone assumed they were a couple, and Emily didn't bother correcting respecting them. It wasn't that she didn't want our relationship to go public. She just didn't want this relationship to go public. She remained silent, and I didn't say another word. I turned and walked away. I had barely made it a few steps when I felt a warm hand grab my wrist. I turned, surprised to see that it was Emily. She had never stopped me before. She always let me leave, knowing I'd inevitably come back to apologize. But this time was different. She pressed her lips together and said, "Jake, you're too impulsive. Ryan is calm and collected, everything you're not. I didn't want to cut you out, but after today, I don't have a choice. These shares need to go to someone who can handle them responsibly." I couldn't help but laugh. This wasn't about my impulsiveness. She was just trying to justify giving my shares to Ryan. In the past, I might have argued with her, but now, I just felt nothing. "Okay," I said simply. Emily blinked, clearly expecting me to put up more of a fight. Before she could say anything else, one of our coworkers called for a champagne toast. Emily shot me one last glance before turning away, the contract in her hand. I watched her walk toward Ryan, then turned and left the banquet hall. Outside, I pulled out my phone and made a call. "Dad," I said, my voice steady, "you were right. I'm ready to come back and take over the family business."